Janet Smurl sat alone in her bathtub one evening, just trying to relax after a long day of housework. The paranormal activity in her home had only been getting worse following the Warrens' first visit. The knocking had continued, keeping the family up most nights, and Janet rarely, ever, felt alone in the house. Activity was happening in their home every single day at this point, and Janet was just trying to take a few minutes in the bathroom to regulate herself, preparing herself for what the spirits had planned for her and her family that night. So she sat in the bath, trying to forget, just for a minute, about the spiritual attacks and wash the grime of the day away when she heard a whistle. It wasn't a tune, not something that could be attributed to a distant TV or one of her kids walking down the hall. No, this was much more sinister. It was the kind of whistle you hear from a man catcalling a woman on the street. But Janet wasn't on the street, and before that time, she thought she was by herself in the room. She felt vulnerable, exposed, and full of fear. She screamed out for Jack. He raced up the stairs and found his wife, frightened and curled up in the corner of the bath, afraid to move and expose herself even more. This wasn't just a violation. This felt like a threat. And it was the beginning of a kind of harassment the Smurls didn't think possible. Today, we are continuing on with part 2 of the Smurl Family horror. So if you haven't seen part 1 yet, I highly suggest you go back and check out the first part and then come back here because we gave a lot of the background, everything that led up to this point. And when we left off, Ed and Lorraine Warren had arrived and interviewed the Smurl family. They provoked the demon that they believed was torturing the family, and the Smurls had a violent and terrifying night. And this week, we'll just jump right back in where we left off and try to finish the story that will be featured in an upcoming Conjuring Universe movie.
I cannot tell you how excited I am for this. I've been waiting. We recorded that episode a few days ago. I've been waiting on the edge of my seat. This scares me so bad. It was so good. I'm really locked in. And it's thundering outside today, so we got this guy.
Petey's with us.
Look how he's laying.
And he's so happy. Piper is not in here because she's the terror of the family.
Unfortunately,
and she will not let Petey rest. So
yeah,
we're letting Petey be here.
Yeah, if he's doing this, she would be jumping on top of me, trying to get in between. She's very bad, but we love her.
Okay, well, I'm ready to jump in if you are.
I am.
Our tea today is Kitchen Witch Chocola-Tea, and it was sent by one of you. I do not recall who.
I don't know,
but thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm intrigued.
Let's go. By the way, if you don't know, I'm Macy, and that's Natalie.
Oh, hi. And this is Petey.
Yes. Tea, surprisingly, very good.
I am not going to lie. When we were brewing the tea, I told Macy, I was like, I'm not going to like it. I can tell you right now.
It is simply cacao husk.
Yeah. And it tastes like chocolate.
Yeah. It's like a lighter version of hot chocolate.
Yeah. And if you put some creamer in there, it would just be
hot chocolate.
Hot chocolate. I'm into it. Thank you. Wow.
I was a little scared because I don't really like tea and chocolate, and I didn't realize it was just chocolate.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
This is solid. Thanks. All right. I'm giving a warning here before we start the episode because this will contain talks of sexual assault and other very disturbing occurrences. I will try my best not to go into too much detail. I do not think it's necessary for the story. You'll get the point. But this is your warning. If this is not something you feel like you can handle today or ever, skip. We'll see you next time. We have a listener stories coming out on Thursday. It's a good one. Here's your chance. Otherwise, we'll just go ahead and dive in. So the bathing incident happened just days after the Warrens left their Pennsylvania home. The Smurls kept in contact with Ed and Lorraine afterwards, and the Warrens decided that they needed to get their team together and find a way to help the family. They knew that their presence would ramp up the activity. It always did. But they didn't expect it to become so violent and threatening so quickly. In early February, they gathered a team of psychic researchers to head over to the Smurl home and see what they could gather in the way of evidence and information to rid the family of their troubles. So they were just basically trying to research, find a way, the best way, I guess, to approach it and get rid of what was plaguing them. Jason Kearns, a legal secretary from Bridgeport, Connecticut, and Ricky Monroe from Huntington worked with the Warrens on investigations in their free time. Ricky was even studying demonology with Ed and Lorraine at the time. They were dispatched out to the Smurl home, and just like Lorraine and Diane did on their first visit, the men could sense something was off as soon as they pulled up on the scene. The two set up tape recorders in the hallway and around some of the hot spots that Lorraine had noticed on her first visit. Then they began interviewing the Smurls on both sides of the duplex. They told them everything they had told Ed and Lorraine, but added in the additional stories that had happened since, like the bathroom.
I hate that one, by the way. was listening, but also my brain wasn't wanting to register what you were saying.
Yeah.
And then again, you said the bathroom. I said,
Ugh. Yeah, it's pretty horrible. Janet wasn't the only one having face-to-face interactions with the spirits in the home now. Jack had an encounter of his own that he didn't know what to make of. Jack was lying down in his bed one Friday night when he was awoken at 2 a.m. to the sounds of people talking. Now, this wasn't new. The couple heard their fair share of voices arguing in the night with no discernible origin, but tonight was very different. Jack opened his eyes, expecting to see his daughters, maybe, because it was two female voices.
Mm-hmm.
But instead was met with the scene of two women he had never encountered before standing right there in his room. One looked as though she were in her early 40s and the other around 20 years old. They were dressed in long dresses and bonnets, looking as though they had been dropped right out of the 1800s and casting a strange glow about them. They stood there talking and then vanished as soon as Jack got a good look at them. He and Janet both thought it must be a dream. They were all stressed at this point, and it would be fair to assume that the stress was creeping into their subconscious. But the very next night, Jack saw the same two women again. They stood there in a shadowy corner of his bedroom, this time whispering to each other. He couldn't make out what they were saying, but it sounded like they were plotting. His heart dropped when the younger woman turned to face him, making eye contact and smiling a very sarcastic and threatening smile. He tried to move, tried to call out for his wife, who was sleeping next to him, but found he couldn't. All he could do was stare into the eyes of the woman he did not know. They continued whispering and sneering at Jack for a while until they both glided into the closet and he could finally move again.
Remind me who the ghosts in the house that they sensed were again. There was an old woman that was confused.
Yes.
There was a young girl.
Who they didn't know much about, but she gave off the vibes of like being very violent.
Yes.
And then, like insane.
Uh-huh.
And then there was I think a middle-aged man maybe, or younger to middle-aged man who they didn't know much about, I think.
And then the demon
and then the
guy
demon,
thing.
Yeah, who was like using them.
Interesting. Okay. Just wanted to remember if there were
Refresh
two.
your memory.
Yeah.
It was while he was telling this story to the two men that the knocking began. Janet and Jack were relieved to have someone else hear the noises besides them, but it was still frightening to all who stood there. Ricky described it, quote, "It was incredible and really frightening. I'd been studying demonology with the Warrens for some time, but I'd never actually had this type of experience before. It was like the air in the room froze. Jason ran upstairs to make sure the recorders were working properly so we'd be sure to get the wrappings on tape. And for the next hour, the knocking came from room to room." Quote, "By then, of course, I didn't have any doubt what we were dealing with. It was a demonic infestation. We spent the entire night listening to, recording, and cataloging a variety of experiences associated with the supernatural. Everything from tape recordings of the wrappings to odors that appeared in certain places in the house." This is Jason recalling about his first trip to the Pittston, Pennsylvania home. Another team member, Brad Peterson, tagged along with Ricky and Jason on their next trip out to the Smurl home, and he too heard the knocking. Quote, "You try to describe it to people and they can't imagine it. You're standing looking at a plain wall and all of a sudden these sounds erupt from inside as if somebody is running up and down the wall, somebody invisible. It gives you chills." Now that 3 of their team members had experienced the strange activity in the home themselves, Ed and Lorraine decided that they needed to make another trip out to the home. This was going to be a much bigger case than they had initially anticipated, and they began reaching out to more people that they'd come across in their investigations prior. They were going to need more hands in this investigation. Including the 6 people already mentioned here and in part 1, the Warrens invited a doctor and a medical examiner, Jeff Newton, a statistician for a large marketing company, and Chris McKinnell, their grandson, who had a BA in psychology. They were all practical people working in fields of science and math, but knew there was something more to the world, for they had seen it themselves and were more than ready to help the Smurls however they could. Ed and Lorraine arrived at the Smurl home once again and didn't waste any time. Lorraine began walking about the home again, getting a read on it and seeing how much had changed since her last visit. She could feel the tension in the home, and this time the demon showed itself to her. Quote, "Right after we got here, I went upstairs and started walking around the girls' rooms. When I was near Dawn's bed, I heard scratching sounds on the window. It sounded like something frantically clawing at the glass. When I looked up, I saw the black form standing outside looking in. It was really hideous."
Upstairs,
out the second floor window.
Oh no. Question. You might get there. I might be jumping the gun, but do we know the name of the demon?
No. It was not listed in the book.
Oh my goodness. That's scary.
That just remains unknown.
Actually, I don't know. Is it scarier to you to not know or scarier when they name it?
I think because of all the exorcisms I've read about, knowing the name kind of gives a little bit of power to the exorcist.
Okay.
Or I guess to the exorcist
You
to
have
call on to God to cast
power
out the demon.
Over it, yeah.
I guess. So I don't know. I don't know where I stand.
I'm scared. I don't know. I hate hearing the names of demons. Like in, oh my god, what's the song?
My first thought was Bohemian Rhapsody.
That's the freaking song I'm thinking.
Oh,
Oh my
okay.
god, I could not think of the name. I was singing it in my head, trying to come up with it. Yeah, Bohemian Rhapsody. I sing that whole song with my soul until that one part, and I'm like, because it scares me.
Yeah.
It makes me nervous. Again, my whole time, like, growing up, I didn't know that's what they were saying. But then when I found out that name of the demon, I said, oh, I made the connection, and it, like, chilled me to
Really?
my core. Yeah, it scares me. Because I was singing it. I didn't
It is
know
scary.
I don't know what they were saying. I just thought it was, like, nonsense. Whew. I'm scared. But it is one of my favorite songs of all time.
It is a great song. Anyway, the Warrens had found a priest who agreed to come by and bless their home once again, and he arrived later that evening. Though he was a kind man, Janet kept noticing apprehensive glances her way. She knew then that their story was getting around. People were beginning to talk about the Smurls and their predicament. The blessing went well, but Janet felt a sense of urgency to get the demon out of their home and return her life back to normal. This wasn't the kind of attention that the family was looking for. After dinner that same night, Ed thought he would go to Jack and Janet's bedroom and force the demon to expose itself. He thought maybe if the demon would come out of hiding, he could banish it in the name of Jesus Christ. But what happened that night only proved further that this was an entity much stronger than the average investigation presented him with. This is Ed's account according to the book, The Haunted. So I'm just going to kind of read an excerpt. He's so cute. I'm just going to kind of read an excerpt of his account. When I entered the bedroom, I felt a chill in the air, as if a presence were literally robbing the air of warmth. I walked around the room, then paused over by the closet, which was, I knew, where the spirits resided, from which point they passed between duplexes. And then my senses were overcome. I don't know any better way to describe it. Have you ever had anybody hold a vial of camphor up to your nose? Do you know how it seems to stun you and knock you backwards? That's what began to happen to me. Then things got even worse. I started to say a prayer out loud, and invisible fingers seized my throat, choking me. I realized there was only one way I could save myself, and that was to place myself into what is called religious resistance. It's very difficult to do at a time when you're being assaulted, but it was my only hope. As carefully as I could, I envisioned the white light of Jesus Christ around my body. I pictured my body glowing with this protective seal, literally the love of God. Gradually, even though I was knocked back flat on the bed, I began to feel the unseen thumbs that pressed at my throat slowly begin to ease up. At this point, one of my assistants, Jeff Newton, came into the room and saw what was happening to me. He began praying with me, and the pressure on my throat let up even more. Finally, I was able to sit up and breathe normally again, probably the worst we'd ever seen. Despite the fact that the demon had attempted to strangle me, I planned to keep on performing religious provocations in each of the rooms. My hope being that in this way the Smurls would have some peace. I stood in the hallway, gathering my senses and strength and my courage, still shaken from nearly being choked to death. In one hand, I carried a crucifix, and it turned out it was a good thing I had. I had just started to pray when I sensed an abrupt chill pass through the room like an invisible cloud. In less time than it took to say 3 Hail Marys, the room's temperature dropped at least 30 degrees. I continued to demand, even though I was starting to get very cold, that the demon be gone. Obviously, it was not responding happily to my demands because I saw a thin, silver gossamer thread start to form in the ornate mirror above the bureau. Stunned, I watched as the thread began to form letters of the alphabet. First Y, and then an O, and then a U. It read, quote, "You filthy bastard, get out of this house." A horrible stench filled my nostrils. The temperature fell even more, and I felt dangerous paralysis set in. Crucifix in hand, I raised it to the mirror and commanded the demon to leave. At first, its message remained clear and in place, but the longer I cried out Christ's name, the less vivid the gossamer writing was. Finally, the thread-like material began to melt, almost like snow exposed to brilliant sunlight. The stink left the room. I felt my body temperature begin to warm.
And this is a direct quote from Ed Warren.
Yes, according to the book, The Haunted.
This sounds too scary to be real.
Mm-hmm.
I also don't want it to be real, but I believe it.
We'll get into that thought process at the end.
Is he physically seeing this, or is he seeing this kind of in
He
his mind?
claims to have physically seen it. The Warrens were looking for a full-on exorcism at this point. The entities residing in this home were dangerous, and it was only a matter of time before someone was seriously hurt. They knew it would be difficult to find someone to help them in the area. It had been trouble for Janet just to get someone to talk to her about it. But in the Warrens' opinion, an exorcism was imperative. But it all came a little bit too late, unfortunately.
What do you mean?
So,
No.
warning for SA.
What?
It's horrifying, disgusting in every way. Skip it if you can, or skip it if you can't watch it. Understandable. So June 21st of that same year, Jack suddenly awoke in his bed. The night had been fairly peaceful. The family had a little movie night and hadn't experienced any of the wrappings on the wall or disgusting odors wafting through the air. But Jack was now awake. It was pitch black, and it felt as though he had just been thrust off a cliff, like he had that feeling in his body. His heart was racing, and he could still feel the remnants of the sensation of falling as he laid there. He was panicked. That's when he saw her, and he knew he wasn't dreaming. She, if you want to call it that, had snake-like scales. Her skin was paper white and covered in patches of scales, and between the patches were open sores running with pus. She was older. He was sure somewhere in her 70s, and had very long, white, scraggly hair, and her eyes were all red. She smiled at him, her gums a strange green color, and some of her very sharp teeth were missing. Jack was horrified at the sight of her, but his body was frozen in a state of paralysis as she walked out of the shadows and right towards him in bed. She climbed on top of him and began to assault him. He remained frozen and in complete terror, unable to stop her. Janet had gone downstairs to sleep because the temperature in the room was a little too warm at being summer, and he was all alone, enduring one of the most horrific acts this monster had performed on the family thus far. He later learned that this was the act of a succubus. After what was only a few minutes but seemed like hours, she was done and she vanished, leaving Jack covered in an unknown substance. He immediately got into the shower, scrubbing his skin until it hurt, and he went downstairs to tell Janet. She cried with him, telling him that the first thing she was going to do in the morning was to call the diocese office and make them hear her. They had to get help. The next morning, Dawn came downstairs telling her parents that she had a horrific dream, a dream of her father being attacked by this horrible, ugly woman. She went on to describe the exact monster that Jack had seen the night before. It was made much more real for both Janet and Jack at this point. There was no possible way for Dawn to have known about the events that took place the night before.
That is probably the worst thing I've heard.
Yes.
I didn't know that was possible. I've heard of a succubus before.
And an incubus.
Yes.
So Ed told him that had to be a succubus because that was like their MO. That's what they did.
I didn't know it would look terrifying. I had heard that they look beautiful.
Sometimes they do.
Oh my god.
This time it didn't.
I mean, that doesn't
But it
change
doesn't matter,
anything.
no.
No. That doesn't change anything. I'm not saying that. It adds the horror factor. Like the extra, like, what am I looking at?
Immediately being scared of just the sight.
Because obviously you'd be scared if a random woman came in your room. But if it just looked like a regular woman, you'd be like, hey, what are you doing here?
Who are you? Yeah.
But for it to be scary looking.
To start off frightened, yeah.
Oh, God. Oh, this is scary.
Yeah.
I hope that's not in the movie. I bet it will be.
I'm sure, maybe.
Something similar.
When I read the book, I almost stopped research. I almost stopped doing it at this point because I was like, this is too much. This is too horrifying, too terrible. But yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's a very interesting case. It's a very scary case. And I thought, I mean, people would want to know, especially because the movie's coming out. I don't know.
I guess this is gross though. I feel weird.
You should be safe to watch from here.
Okay. After we're all traumatized. Welcome back.
So Janet did what she said that she would and immediately called the diocese. This time, a priest answered. He told Janet that his name was Father Calloway, and he seemed very attentive to Janet's story. Unlike some of the other clergy she'd spoken to at this point, he didn't brush off her concerns and seemed to believe her. He didn't argue and agreed with her that they needed the church's help. Quote, "Why don't you let me do some talking to the chancellor, and then you can give me a call tomorrow morning." Janet was elated. Finally, someone was taking her seriously and offering her the help that they had been begging for. She got off the phone with the priest, and a sense of relief that maybe their troubles were going to end soon washed over her. She immediately called Jack, who then spoke to one of his close friends at the church. He was just as relieved to have been believed and was seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. But his friend gave him pause. He had never heard of a Father Calloway, and he had been close with those working in the diocese that Janet had called. So he was close. He knew basically everyone.
My God.
But he promised to do some digging. 20 minutes later, he called Jack back to tell him that there is no Father Calloway at that office. No one he spoke to had ever heard of such a man. Janet had spoken to him. She was sure. She was positive. So Jack's friend gave him the number of the office of Father Emmett Doyle. They were going to get this straightened out.
So it was pretending to be a priest?
It's possible.
What are we doing?
Janet called the next day and asked for Father Doyle. She explained the entire story once again and told of the man that she had spoken with just the day before. She explained how he was going to help them, but Father Doyle only confirmed their friend's suspicions even further. There was no Father Calloway at the diocese. He told Janet that he'd take the matter under consideration and get back with her the next day, and he never called. Janet was beginning to think that Father Calloway just might be another trick of the demons. She thought maybe it was making a fool out of her, instilling false hope just to pull the rug out from under her and her family and embarrassing her in front of the diocese. Maybe it was the demon's way of ensuring the family never received the help that they needed.
Yeah, make them look crazy.
Yes.
Oh my god.
When you kind of get that little rise of hope, and the rug gets pulled, it's even more despair.
It's worse, but also, yeah, makes you feel worse, but then makes people less likely to help you because they're like, man, these people are
What
crazy.
are they talking about? Yeah. So the Smurls once again turned to the Warrens. They told the team about all the events they and the elder Smurls had endured since their last visit, including that Janet was now feeling threatening touches in her sleep, though it hadn't gone as far as Jack's encounter. And Chris alleged to have picked up something very unsettling on his tapes that visit. He could hear the faint sounds of pigs squealing, and this was a sign to the Warrens of a, quote, harsh demonic presence. It was powerful, and it was taunting them all. The Warrens found someone to help. Father Robert McKenna of Monroe, Connecticut, was a traditionalist. He had broken with the church after the Second Vatican Council, and he was willing to do what he could to help the Smurls rid themselves of evil. The Smurls were both excited and scared of the prospect of an exorcism in their home. They were warned by Ed and Lorraine that such a religious ceremony could provoke the demon, and the night before Father McKenna was set to arrive, that proved to be true already. The same two women Jack saw in the room before appeared that night standing right before their bed. But this time, someone else was with them. It was a middle-aged man with light blonde hair, and all three of them were staring at Jack. He tried to sit up and fight, to yell for them to leave, but he found himself paralyzed once again. At first, they just talked amongst themselves, but the man leaned forward and pointed at Jack. "You'll pay for this." They stood there for another 5 minutes at least, whispering, laughing a sinister laugh, and then the man looked at Jack again, this time the rage on his face overwhelming. "As I said, you'll pay for this." Then they all disappeared.
Pay for what? Pay
Trying
for
to get
what?
rid of them, I guess.
Oh my god. They're just trying to live. They're just trying to exist in their home.
Well, the demon wants their fear.
Oh my god.
The Warrens were unable to make it to the exorcism because on their way there, Ed became severely ill with a high fever and blurred vision, forcing Lorraine to get in the driver's seat and take them back home. But the rest of the team and Father McKenna made it out to Pennsylvania for the ceremony. They turned the table into an altar for Father McKenna to say Mass in Latin at the end. Then he proceeded to every room of the house on both sides, including the basements, attics, and backyard, reciting the prayers of exorcism and sprinkling the space with holy water. To the Smurls' great surprise, there was no sign of the demon anywhere. Unlike when Ed and Lorraine prayed and provoked the demon with religious iconography, this was a very quiet affair. They made their way back downstairs where Mass was held, but as they knelt to pray, the sounds of a child throwing a tantrum rang out from upstairs. There was banging and screaming, but then the kitchen cupboard started swinging open and banging shut. Plants and knickknacks belonging to the Smurls were vibrating as Father McKenna continued, speaking louder now over all of the sounds. It all grew louder and louder until Father McKenna was practically yelling out his celebrations of Jesus when it all very abruptly stopped. The scent of roses filled the air. The ceremony was done, and Father McKenna packed up his things and left. He gave the family a warning, though before making his way back to Connecticut. He told them to never recognize the demon. He believed not mentioning the monster was the best way to keep the power out of its hands.
Yep, that's what I would do. That's what I would do.
I mean, it's hard when they're attacking you in your sleep.
It's not real. Oh, it was a bad dream. It was
Yeah.
a bad dream. Oh, I need to get more sleep. It was the Benadryl. It was the Hat Man.
Yeah.
I'm not believing it. I'm not.
Horrible.
Mm-mm.
The Smurls were hopeful after that night. There was no activity well into the next day, but it didn't last long. Strange noises, disappearing items, and levitating dishes and jewelry began once again. It took Ed some time to recover from his mystery illness, but young Karen got so sick that she lost 7 pounds in 36 hours after this exorcism.
What?
About a week later. She was hospitalized for a whole week. The doctors tried everything they could to lower her fever and help her to stop losing weight, but it took some time. Luckily, Karen recovered, but it was a nightmare for the Smurls for quite a while. 16-year-old Dawn had her most frightening encounter following the exorcism as well, once again taking place in the bathroom. She was taking a shower before bed. It had been a couple of weeks since the family had their first exorcism done in the house. As she leaned back to rinse the shampoo out of her hair, she felt a tight grasp on her arm. Frightened, she tried to pull away, but the invisible hand held on tighter. Just like her mom, she felt exposed, vulnerable, and full of fear as she struggled to break free of the disembodied hand's grip. It held on so tight that tears were beginning to well up in her eyes, hurting her. She finally was able to tear herself away from the entity, screaming for her parents as she ran out of the bathroom, wrapped in only a towel.
Not in the shower.
I will
Not
be
in the shower.
thinking of this.
Yeah, I showered right before you got here.
Well, good thing. You won't need
Thanks.
one for a little bit then.
God. Well, I'm going to be drenched in sweat, so I will have to shower when you leave.
It was overwhelming, the amount of very intense activity plaguing the family for weeks following. It continued dropping the temperature in rooms all over both houses, and faucets would turn on and off by themselves. Janet awoke one morning to find gouge marks on her arms and fingers as if she had been bitten by something in her sleep, and Jack had even woken up to his own bite marks, I think on his ear one morning.
Oh my God.
Mary Swirl awoke one morning with slash marks on her arm. The whole family was seeing physical manifestations of the entities in their home. Janet saw a grotesque figure begin to form in her bathroom. Jack saw a young man with a snarling smile staring at him from across the living room one afternoon. Mary saw a faceless black form in her home once again. And a visiting relative even claimed to see an elderly woman with long white hair standing in the window of the Smurls' home as they pulled up to the home. Jack was levitated from his bed and hurled to the ground one night, too.
What do you even do? What do you do?
And there's nothing you can do. They're just sleeping.
Can you go somewhere? Like, what is even the remedy?
They're trying. Exorcism. I don't know. They needed something.
This is too much.
One of the most egregious assaults came to Shannon around this time. She was thrown out of her bed one night, and the sound of her crash to the ground was violent. When Janet and Jack raced to the twins' room, they found her lying on the ground, badly bruised and sobbing. They thought at first she may have just rolled off the top bunk somehow, but they found this wasn't the case. She hit the wall across the room before falling to the ground, and she heard a disembodied voice speak to her, saying, quote, 1 strike, 2 strikes, 3 strikes, and you're out.
What?
The family had done their best to ignore the demon, only speaking of it outside the home, but this was too far for Jack. He began screaming at it to show itself. He wasn't afraid anymore. He just wanted to be done.
Show yourself?
I'm just kind of like, how dare you show yourself, you
No.
evil being.
Oh my God.
John and Mary heard the commotion and rushed over to help where they could. They brought a certified relic that John had been keeping in his bedside table. It was a wooden cross that he said contained a thread of the robe of Jesus. He handed it over to his daughter-in-law. Quote, I think the demon means to kill all of us. I didn't used to think that. I thought it was just wanting to torment us. But now I think it wants our lives. So I want you and Jack to have this relic to protect yourselves with. And when Janet and Jack protested, asking them how they would protect themselves, Mary turned to Janet and said, quote, we're old. If something happens to us, we've lived our lives. You have a family to raise. You take the relic. Unquote.
That is so sad. Oh my God.
They're just like, we need to protect you.
Like someone's gonna die. That's crazy. This is like the scariest one.
One of the scariest stories ever.
Yeah.
The family's desperation was growing, and John and Mary only wanted to protect their family. Mary was having health troubles, particularly with her heart, and was told by her doctor to lower her stress, but the activity in both of their homes was weighing on everyone. It was even beginning to affect Jack's work. He and a coworker named Mary Ramos had on many occasions heard a strange ringing from their office telephone that neither of them had ever heard before. It only started after Jack told Mary about some of the incidents the family had encountered. So only after he started talking about it at work did this strange, it was almost like a fire alarm going off, buzzing from their phone that they never heard before. They had even called the phone company asking like what it could be, but nobody could figure it out. They came out and looked at it, nothing was wrong. They didn't understand why it wasn't programmed to make that noise. It drove them both nuts, but the icing on the cake came when one day Jack scrambled up to Mary, asking her if it was just him or if she could hear tapping from inside the radio.
No.
She walked up, not hearing anything at first, but then there it was. The same knocking Jack heard from his home coming from his work radio.
Did you hear that knock on the wall over there?
No, what?
It's my neighbor.
Oh my God, you just scared me to death.
This is horrible for me because when I'm in this room specifically, I think their living room is on the other side of this wall.
Mm-hmm.
I hear them moving. I hear them tapping. I hear them coughing. Like, it's very rare because they're not loud. They're like a very quiet family. But man, if I don't have my headphones on editing and I have it out loud, I get scared.
You hear everything?
Oh, I get scared.
That's creepy.
And that it literally just sent a chill. Like there was a knock right over here and I said,
right at the same time we were talking about this?
mhm.
That is so scary. Janet claimed that she too was assaulted in her sleep, just as Jack was, but by an invisible force, so she didn't see it.
Oh my God.
It was tormenting the family, causing them to lose sleep most nights. So Janet, with an excruciating headache, one July afternoon, decided to lie down for a nap while the children played softball in the yard. But it was only maybe 20 minutes after her eyes closed when she began to feel a gentle touch on her legs. Her eyes shot open as it made its way up to her stomach. She sat up looking around, panicked, but nothing was there. So she decided to brush it off, lying back down and closing her eyes. But as she began to doze again, she felt the touch again. It was extremely uncomfortable, but this time it made its way up to her throat. She was choking now, clawing at a hand that she couldn't touch and calling out for help, but the grip was so tight that nothing came out. She was thrown to the ground, and after seeing spots as she lost air, she envisioned a protective light of Christ's love and could just barely make out the image of Simon, the family dog, crouching low in the corner of her vision, baring its teeth at her assailant. The dog leapt through the air, attempting to lunge at the intruder, but nothing helped. The dog couldn't help his owner either. Janet cried out for Jesus to help her, and the hand's grip began to loosen. It loosened enough that she could get a gasp of air and reached for the holy water. She was overcome with fear, but kept on until she could no longer feel the presence lingering in the living room. The Smurls reached out to the Warrens once again, getting help from Father McKenna with a second exorcism.
Poor Simon.
I know.
Simon doesn't even know what's going on.
I know. The second exorcism happened in a similar fashion as the first, but this time there weren't any interruptions. It all passed uneventfully, and the Smurls hoped and prayed that this was a sign that they could finally get some peace. But as you'd suspect, that wasn't the case. A cacophony of knocks rang through the night, waking all in the duplex and keeping them up for hours once again. It all continued just as it had before, and it seemed no matter what they did, it would never stop. Janet continued having encounters in the bathroom, particularly with full apparitions appearing before her. One particular encounter really shook her. As she walked to the bathroom to get a drink of water in the middle of the night, Jack had insisted on leaving the light on at night at this point. She turned the corner and saw a hunched shadow figure standing in front of the cabinet. It looked as though it was reaching for the cabinet doors when it noticed Janet was there. It turned around, looking at her and making her skin crawl. It moved away from the cabinet and right toward Janet. Quote, I ran down the hall, stumbling on a throw rug and banging my knee pretty badly, but I kept running. I went in and started shaking Jack. Fortunately, I was able to wake him up right away. He went with me into the bathroom, taking the holy water along, but by that time, the dark form had left. I didn't sleep the rest of the night.
Bathrooms, off limits. Showers, everybody put your swimsuit on. We're taking a family shower. We're not doing the bathroom alone anymore. Showers in twos. Everybody put a swimsuit on. We'll look the other way. We're just going to bathe together because how? How do you go on?
I don't know.
Is that weird for me to say? At this point,
no.
Okay, after one little, ooh, we may be haunted. Okay, maybe swimsuits in the shower is weird. After this?
Yeah, I mean, it's gotten to a point where maybe.
Communal shower. Put your shower shoes and your bathing suit on and let's go. Oh
Understandable.
My God.
Figures continued appearing before the family. The apparition of an old woman, one that was glowing and gave them an ominous, chilling feeling. And now Karen was seeing the black, cloaked shadow figure roaming the halls at night. The family thought if the church couldn't help them, then maybe it was time to go public. They thought about selling the home, of course, or just abandoning it completely and moving away, but they feared it would only follow them to their new location. So they spoke with Ed and Lorraine Warren and chose to go on a talk show called People Are Talking, hosted by Richard Bay. Lorraine had been invited on, and she thought the Smurls could just come with her. They agreed, but kept themselves hidden on screen and their identities secret. They remained in shadow, not lit by any stage lights, and told the story of the torment they and their family were enduring. They felt an uplifting and promising feeling, though they had experienced bed shaking, forcing them to forego sleep and sit upright in chairs in the hotel room the night before.
Well, that answers my question of why can't you just go to a hotel?
That's why. They had a feeling that the demon didn't want its story told, and maybe they were right. But they were hoping that someone who knew how to rid themselves of such evil could come forward and help them in any way that they could. Their home was almost unbearable afterwards. However, Mary claimed that the day they appeared on TV, that the knocking in their home became overwhelming and she felt that she needed to leave for her safety. Mary was so stressed that her heart condition was exacerbated and she actually even eventually suffered from a heart attack.
Oh no.
She recovered thankfully, but it was never ending for both families. Janet was severely attacked after they went public. She woke up one night to the covers being pulled down off of her body and being thrown to the floor. She tried to get up, but she felt disoriented and couldn't move, feeling herself lose control of her body. Then she was suspended into midair above her mattress. This wasn't new, but what happened next was she was taken from her bed, still lying and down and levitating in the air. It was as if she was being carried around her room, bumping into the wall and continuing on. Quote, obviously, it's not something I'll ever forget. It twisted me around several times and then hurled me into the far wall. Just before I crashed, I crossed my hands over my skull to protect it from collision. Then the demon turned me over very quickly and at such an angle that my hands and arms were outstretched. I only had a few seconds to put myself into the fetal position because I could see the demon was going to catapult me again into the wall, this time trying to break my hands and arms. All the time this was happening, I was screaming for Jack to wake up, pleading with him. What happened finally, I can't even really describe. All I could think of was being in a trance. I saw everything in our shadowy bedroom very clearly, but at the same time, I had the sense that I was caught between worlds, this one and the life after, almost as if I was hanging between life and death itself. And then suddenly, I was lying next to Jack, and I was sobbing. Really out of control, and he woke up and tried to calm me down, asking me what happened. I showed him the bruises from where the demon had slammed me into the wall, and then I went back to sobbing again. I was afraid I'd really been pushed over the edge. The next time, it was Jack's turn to be terrified. He had been asleep for maybe 30 minutes before he awoke to the sounds first. It was faint, but he opened his eyes and was face to face with a literal monster. It was 8 feet tall and stood on 2 legs. It had wide shoulders and a furry head with bright red eyes and a snout like a pig's. Its mouth was slobbering and made smacking noises as it clawed at the air toward him. It was threatening Jack with evisceration, almost as though it were being held back by some invisible force. Jack screamed out in terror, waking Janet, who found nothing in the room, but immediately saw Jack shaking and lying in the middle of their bedroom floor covered in sweat. He was gasping for air, and it took him 10 minutes to calm down enough to talk to her. The first thing he said as he turned to his wife was, quote, "Now I know what hell's going to look like." The beast was indescribable, and he stayed awake all night with its image in his head. The family continued hearing voices that weren't their own calling for them through the house, and some of the noises throughout the home were coming in threes, described to them as a mocking of the Holy Trinity. They were getting nowhere with their TV appearance, and their hopes of coming into contact with someone who could help them dwindled day by day. They discussed going fully public with their names and addresses. They were desperate, but they were afraid of ridicule and what it might do to the children if they had. They continued to consider demolishing the home completely and moving away. But with some of the encounters following them from their home, like in their hotel room before their TV appearance, and at their campsite afterwards, so they went to camp and had some strange things, they didn't think it would work. The family had tried to test it out. They all gathered into the camper. This time, John and Mary came along trying to leave the home completely vacant, but the entity was with them no matter where they escaped to. The family endured shaking mattresses, voices calling for them from the woods, and even the sounds of animal hooves dancing across their camper roof at night. On the third night, Jack claimed to see the cloaked demon sitting outside their camper at a picnic table, tauntingly staring at him through the window, smiling as if he knew they would never escape him.
What is the reason? Like,
I mean, I don't know. Some theorize that it was just
already there. Yes.
And exacerbated, like we talked about in the first part.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Whatever is the reason.
I don't know.
It's just whatever this is pure evil.
Yeah, sometimes people, play with that stuff or,
and, reach out and...
Yeah, but they were just living.
Yeah.
Or trying to.
Whoa. When the family returned home from their camping trip, they were more exhausted than they were before they left. The house smelled horrid, and Janet had yet another horrifying encounter in bed. She was lying there. It was almost 10 a.m. at this point, and she was so tired. Then she felt a hand reach up from beneath her mattress and grab her by the back of the neck. It was strong and holding her in place with its hot and clammy touch. She tried to get away, but it was no use. She was giving up. She said aloud, quote, "I don't care what you do to me. If you want to kill me, go ahead. I'm not going to fight back or anything. I'm starting to lose my will and maybe my sanity. So why don't you just go ahead and get it over with? Take me right here and right now, but leave the rest of my family alone." The hand disappeared after that, not getting the fear it usually got from the family, unable to feed off of her terror.
Why would you say that?
She was fed up. I mean, it's been over a year, 2 years.
God.
It began taunting and attempting to lure Simon, their beloved dog, to the closet too. Heather could hear through the walls a voice whispering to Simon, calling him when nobody was in the room. And there was one night when the sounds of a cat meowing was coming from within the Smurl's closet, causing Simon to rush the doors.
No.
Janet doing all she could to calm the dog and keep him out of there.
Oh, that is so horrifying.
Yeah, I don't like it.
That's one of the scariest things I've ever heard.
I don't like it at all.
A cat, mock...
It was time for the Smurls to do the last thing they wanted. They were going fully public now. They were beyond desperate for answers and needed help no matter the cost. So they contacted the diocese one last time. They told her that they'd help, but never called back. So the night before they decided to call the press, the succubus attacked Jack again. It was then that they contacted a reporter named Sandy Underwood with the Wilkes-Barre Sunday Independent. Janet said, "Sandy was very nice. She took us seriously and asked very intelligent follow-up questions and gave us plenty of time to clarify what we said. Ed and Lorraine backed up everything we said. They were very helpful to us. I have to smile when I think back to some of Sandy's expressions. We gave her a lot of material, probably a lot more than she thought she'd get, and Ed and Lorraine gave her a very good grounding in the whole psychic experience. I was surprised how sympathetic and attentive to detail she was. She really wasn't just looking for a sensational story. She wanted the truth to be told, and she was willing to let us tell it our way, and so we did." Jack also made sure to say that there was an inherent plea in the story for anybody who could help us to please step forward and do so. We also made a very strong appeal for the diocese to get involved again. So they made sure that Sandy was writing we are doing this because we need help.
We want help.
Please, anybody
Yeah.
help us.
Yeah, that's so sad.
The story brought on so much attention, but still not what they were looking for, the help that they needed. They fielded calls from more than 200 journalists after the story was published, and their home became a target. People would show up to their house day and night, gawking at the home and its residents, hoping for a glimpse of the paranormal that the family claimed to encounter. Some seemed to believe them, others scoffed at them as they came inside and outside of their doors. Their street turned into a parking lot of onlookers. Eventually, teens and others who believed they were just looking for attention began driving by, throwing bottles and bricks and other items at their home. Some even camped out on the sidewalk, waiting for them during the day, climbed trees near the home, and looked into their house, hoping for a peek.
Oh my god.
It was
See, I
so
knew
much.
I knew if they went public that was going to happen. That was
Yeah.
my fear.
The only help that they received came from a woman named Megan Cosgrove. She introduced him to another psychic who agreed to walk through the home and see what she could do. She made her way around the house, telling the family what she could sense. Quote, "We could see that she was very aware of what was going on here and was also very concerned. She asked to be taken through all the rooms in the house and then down into the basement, which was where she came into contact with a spirit named Abigail. Abigail is elderly and she's either senile or confused, but she isn't harmful." Then Betty Ann went to describe Abigail in exactly the same terms Lorraine had months earlier. 20 minutes later, when Betty Ann asked to be taken to the middle bedroom upstairs, we saw how exactly her sense of the haunting matched Lorraine's, because Betty Ann then started to describe another spirit she was seeing, a man with a mustache named Patrick, who she said had died here but was afraid to return to the other side. Betty Ann lost in another trance, then began to give us some background on Patrick. He was a man who often beat his wife Elizabeth somewhere near the Smurl property before the house was built. This was sometime in the 19th century. Whenever Elizabeth became afraid of Patrick, she became involved with another man. One day, Patrick came home unexpectedly and found Elizabeth in the embrace of her lover. He killed both of them, strangling Elizabeth and beating the man to death with his fists. Betty Ann then described how Patrick was beaten by a mob and then hung for the murders. And then she turned to me and said something we'd never expected. "Janet, you look like Elizabeth. Patrick thinks Jack is your lover, and he wants you and Jack separated." Betty Ann, in a strange, deep voice, began to implore Patrick to go to the other side, but she told us that he was afraid he'd be punished if he crossed into the other realm. When Betty Ann came out of the trance, she said, very matter-of-factly, "Patrick doesn't want to leave this house. It will be very difficult to get rid of him." Then Betty Ann paused, looking very distressed, and said, "But that isn't the worst news. There's more, I'm afraid." She shook her head, almost as if she were afraid to give voice to what she was thinking. "There's a third earthbound spirit here. It could be either a man or a woman, I'm not sure, but whatever it is, it's violent and vicious and means to harm you. This is the malevolent spirit that controls Patrick and continues to urge him to do violence. This is a spirit that wants the demon to commit the ultimate atrocity, possession of one or both of you." Her eyes stared at midpoint in the room, and her voice became even huskier. "Then there is the demon itself, a direct disciple of the devil's. I sense it throughout the house, everywhere."
Okay, so the thing that she talked about previously wasn't even the demon. Oh my
No, there's a
God.
vicious spirit that likes what the demon is doing.
Mm-hmm.
What's crazy to me is, like, this is very much along the lines of what Lorraine had sensed, and Diane, the
Yes.
first visit to the house, you know?
So it makes it so real.
Several of the Smurls' neighbors reported the same bizarre activity in their homes after the story was published, though none of them had it to the extent that the Smurls did. Father Doyle of their diocese seemed a little upset at the attention the story brought to him, and the church as well. He told the Smurls that they should have contacted him before going to the press, but they had and weren't getting any help.
Mm-hmm.
They were receiving so many calls from concerned citizens asking that they help the Smurl family, but finally, Father Doyle sent a priest out to the home to talk with them. They explained that they had 2 exorcisms already, but it wasn't helping. They couldn't get the sense of whether he believed them or not, but he was cordial and said he'd be back with the family shortly, soon, whenever. They did have another priest from a different diocese offer to help them, but the Scranton office said that him coming in like that would break protocol and asked that he allow the Scranton diocese to handle business in their jurisdiction. So they were like, "No, we want to investigate our own stuff first. Bye."
Okay.
Jack was beginning to be more physically affected than he ever had. It started late one night in the midst of back and forth with the church when he got up to go to the bathroom. He turned into the room to see his own reflection, but it was distorted. His face was pale and gaunt and looked as though it had just risen from the grave. He felt it was a warning to him. He was afraid that the demon was moving closer to his ultimate goal of possession.
Mm-hmm.
So the team spent days with the Smurls coming up with a plan for a mass exorcism that would involve several priests coming in and doing what they could to cast out the evil spirit. But the Scranton diocese refused. They were still doing their own investigation, and they didn't want the wardens involved any longer. Quote, despite the efforts of the church to carry on its plans, Janet and I felt that it was important for us to carry on with ours, namely a prayer meeting organized by our friends and 50 women and 20 men of the Sacred Heart League of St. Mary's Annunciation in Kingston, which is near West Pittston. So Jack and Janet decided, okay, well, if we can't have a bunch of priests come in, at least we're going to have a bunch of people that we know and are a part of our faith come in and help us pray in a way, I guess.
I mean, yeah, what else is there to do?
I don't know.
I
don't
feel
know.
so, and I hate
Helpless?
to say it, I feel hopeless. I just feel like, what
Yeah.
next?
And that's how they
What
were feeling.
else?
That's exactly how they were feeling.
I cannot imagine.
They all gathered in the Smurl home for a night of prayer and well wishes. They were trying to drive the demon out with the words of the Lord. Some stayed late into the night, and it was all calm, and a sense of ease washed over the family home. Unfortunately, just a few hours after the guests left, the Smurls found their efforts fruitless, and the demon was back.
I'm getting tired.
They keep getting these feelings of like hope, and it's just taken away from them.
I'm getting tired of the back and forth. I really am. And what's her name? Off of Charmed. Imagine how we feel. Alyssa
Yeah.
Milano.
Mm-hmm. They finally heard from the Scranton Diocese, and they agreed to send out a priest to investigate for himself. He stayed overnight several times, but nothing happened. Of course, the family was relieved to have a few nights of peace, but upset that the demon didn't show himself, and the family was left again without a church-sanctioned solution. Jack and Janet were losing weight, stressed, and worried for their family. The combination of the demonic activity and the attention from the story was weighing on them both heavily. So Father McKenna returned one last time to do what he could. Father McKenna said a special mass for the Smurls before making his way back to the family's home that evening. The exorcism was the same as before, prayers for both sides of the duplex and walking through every single room. There were no disruptions. The days following, the Warrens and the Smurl family had asked friends, relatives, and fellow parishioners to come to their home every day in an attempt to, quote, drown the demon in prayer. It seemed as though it might be working. Quote, you could feel something, the way air changes after a storm has passed. At first, we were almost afraid to hope that the prayers and vigils would help in any lasting way. But overall, the days following the exorcism were great. We hadn't been that relaxed in over 2 years.
I love that for them. I can't imagine just constantly being stressed
Finally,
out
a relief.
and scared. And back to a little bit ago when you were talking about Mary, how she was sick and the doctor was like, you got to stop your stress. I hate that. I know it's like valid, but
Yeah.
all right, I'll stop stressing. I'm being haunted by a demon and several other spirits. Let me just calm down.
But it's okay. I'll figure it out.
That's like you having a bad day and someone's like, just breathe.
I know. So from September to December of that year, the home smelled of roses and they hadn't had any activity at all. They were relieved, but still apprehensive. They'd been let down before after thinking they were in the clear, but after the first few weeks of total silence, they felt that they could finally live their lives normally again. They began having friends over again and joining in on community events. They even released a statement on October 28th, letting the public know that they might be free. Quote, for several weeks now, all has been quiet in our house, and it would appear that our problem has been resolved. A spokesperson for the diocese said that after an intensive investigation, the diocese has reached no conclusions and had taken no position on the case, but that since the Smurl said the matter had been resolved, the diocese was closing its inquiry.
They never really opened it much, but
So they're like, I mean, we sent
alright.
people out there. We didn't see anything. I mean, obviously we don't think that they're liars, but we're not seeing anything, so we'll just close the case since they're fine. The Smurls didn't care much at that point. As long as they were safe and living a normal life, it didn't matter to them. But just 2 weeks before Christmas, Jack saw it. He had just turned the TV off for the night and got up to get ready for bed. But in the mirror above the sofa, he could see the black cloaked shadow figure standing there, tauntingly. Jack could feel a pull, as if it were beckoning him to it. He ignored the call, he felt, and ran to his room, holding on to his rosary as he prayed, but the figure was upon him. It grew closer and closer to him as he ran up the stairs. He could sense it was getting ready to lunge at him, so he prayed aloud and closed his eyes, but when he opened them, he could see the demon fade into the wall beside him. Not gone, ever present, and waiting for him. The family finally moved out of their home on Chase Street in 1987. This is where the book ends, but I found some reports that the black-caped figure made its appearance in their new home within weeks. There are reports that the Catholic Church finally sanctioned an exorcism, but it hasn't been confirmed by the diocese. So I did read one article that was like a priest from somewhere else read the book and was so like distraught and upset that the church hadn't done enough to help them.
Me
so
too.
he like contacted the Vatican personally, like one of the people in the Vatican, and eventually they were able to get someone sanctioned by the church to perform an exorcism. So says this article. Now, I don't know, I didn't read any like direct quotes from the Smurls or anything. So take it with a grain of salt, I guess. But the few places that I did find this claim said that the final exorcism worked and they lived the rest of their days in peace. John and Mary passed away without the worry of the demon still tormenting their family, and Jack passed in 2017. Janet and her daughters remain still unbothered by the paranormal. Though I did read in one of the articles, they claimed Karen offers help to those who are going through what her family endured for many years. So, like, if she hears about someone local, like, experiencing that, she will go and, like, be with them and be like, I believe you, I hear you, we saw the same thing.
Oh my God.
You're not alone, you know?
Yeah, but all of them are still alive except for the dad?
The dad and his parents, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, his parents were, like, in their 70s and the 80s.
Yeah.
While all of this was happening.
I figured, but wow.
Yeah.
It really wasn't that long ago.
No, it wasn't. Now, there are many, many, many skeptics of the case of the Smurl family, as well as the Warrens as a whole. We kind of talked about this. And there were many people who visited the Smurl home and claimed to never experience anything out of the ordinary. Some believe that the Smurls were either lying for attention or suffering from some kind of shared delusion or hallucinations.
I don't think so.
Jack did have brain surgery in 1983 to remove fluid from around his brain that he said was caused by a case of meningitis he had as a child. So, could it be that he suffered some kind of memory trouble or hallucinations from his medical condition, and that caused the family as a whole to begin perceiving the experience and strange encounters and everything like that? Like, could he have started it? Like, I'm losing my memory. I'm seeing strange things. I'm like forgetting where I put things. It must be demonic. And then so the family starts kind of like, what if it is, you know?
I don't think so, because there were so many people and outsiders that didn't live with them that are like, oh my God, what's happening over here?
Yeah.
So no. I
So
don't
says
think
the
so.
book anyway.
Yeah, I don't think so.
One Allentown psychologist, Robert Gordon, believes that, quote, people often look at demonology to explain many tensions that they experience as individuals and within their families, unquote. Maybe it was the Smurls' background as practicing Catholics that led them to demons as the explanation when some of their experiences could be explained away by logical means. The people who moved into the Smurl home after they left claimed to experience zero in the way of the paranormal. Like nothing. Both sides.
Someone took the home after?
Yeah.
Oh.
So they sold the home and a couple of people moved in, and neither one of them, both of them were like, no, nothing strange has happened. They hadn't even had the shadow of a ghost pass through their halls since moving in. Nothing. Not a misplaced item. Not a shadowy figure in the corner of their eyes. Nothing. But it followed them, supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
That leads me to the Warrens. Now, I won't do a deep dive here on them because that's like an entire video in itself.
Oh, yeah.
And we just won't go there. But many people believe that they moved in on suspected hauntings, exacerbating them for profit and even flat out lying about some of people's experiences to sell more books. Nearly all of the Warrens' cases have been scrutinized, and there have been some who have come out and claimed that the Warrens, particularly Ed, would tell their writers to lie and like juice up the stories a bit to make them scarier and more sensational. So even if a case was full of like minor supernatural encounters, maybe something was going on, the Warrens sought to add details that would make the cases they were involved in much more exciting. With claims like these, it's hard to take much of what they said throughout their career at face value.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people who come out and said no. Like it sounds too sensational. It sounds too scary to be real because it's not real, because they're adding to it to sell books. Those are the claims made by some.
That's a good point.
I don't fall on either side because I don't know anybody involved in any of these cases, so who am I to judge? But
I don't know.
there you go.
I'm kind of on the same boat as you. I don't know.
Yeah. There are also claims by a woman that Ed began an extramarital relationship with her when she was only 15 years old, like long ago. She lived with the Warrens and she claimed Lorraine even knew about it. She was taken advantage of and abused by Ed for decades, so she says. Now, these claims didn't come out until after Ed's death, and they were strictly allegations, but they are out there for you to look into further if you please. I'm not going to fall on either side because I only read like one article about it. I mean, but I believe someone if they said that they were abused like that.
I was going to say, I believe her, kind of, wow.
I'm of the mind that I usually will believe someone
that has been hurt.
Yeah.
Me too. This is sick, and now I feel even more disturbed than I did about just the demons. Thank you so much.
I wasn't going to go into it, but someone commented that, and I was like, you are joking. I mean, the only thing I really knew about the Warrens was like the Conjuring Universe,
Me too.
And so I read one article about it, and I was like, ooh.
Suddenly, I see, and this is why I say all the time, I am so afraid of getting on the internet and being like, yay, I love this person, woo, this person, because
you never know.
They're people, and a lot of people suck.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe most people are good, but there's a lot of weirdos.
Yeah.
My God.
So,
you can't like anybody
no,
without
not
it being
really.
controversial.
Not really. It's very upsetting.
God. Not even controversial, just straight up like,
Evil.
how dare you?
So if this is all true, the Warrens wouldn't be the devoutly religious truth seekers that they made themselves out to be. Again, I want to say that this is all speculation and allegation, and I'm not here to prove anybody right or wrong, but it is just something to consider after listening to a story so incredibly horrifying and unlike anything I've heard before.
That's a good point.
So were they just looking for profit? Were they looking to profit on other people's suffering, first of all, which would be horrible?
That's even worse.
Are they coming in knowing people are dealing with something supernatural, something that they can control, and just feeding their fear so that they can get, more money off of it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But that's what some people allege. Whether the Smurls and subsequently the Warrens' claims were true, I believe the Smurls did suffer in some way. They did face criticism and harsh words from people in their community and all over the world who didn't believe a word they said. I think the truth may lie somewhere in the middle. I think the Smurl family definitely went through something frightening for them.
Yeah.
Why would they open themselves up to so much criticism from the people in their community that they were so involved in before?
Yeah.
If they weren't actually afraid.
Going through something. Whether that be demons or mental illness or something.
Yeah. The Warrens may have made it worse in an attempt to capitalize off their story, but either way, I believe the Smurls were afraid of something. I'd like to hear what you think in the comments. What do you think? Where do you lie? Because as I was reading the book, I thought this is too
sensational.
This is too scary movie. There's too much happening, you know? And most cases that we've read and most even movies that we watch, it's little bits here and there. It's not like
they're not being impounded
over and over and over for so long, you know?
I know there was a point where every time you'd be like, they had a thing.
And then
and another one. It's like, oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
And you cut some stuff.
I cut some stuff out because there was so much stuff in the book.
I don't know where I fall. Honestly, this was a roller coaster.
It was so scary. If it's all true, terrifying.
If it's all true,
this one of the scariest stories I've ever read.
I can't go on.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to tell myself it was embellished a little bit.
I am, though, excited to see the movie.
Oh, 100%. I will be watching.
I'd like to hear
sat in
what
that
the
theater.
Smurls have to say about the movie, too.
Me too.
So once it comes out, I'm going to kind of be on a lookout to see if any of them come out with
a
anything.
Statement.
Though I don't know if they would. Because they're not in the light. They're not trying to seek attention for it. From what I've seen, they're not out there trying to talk about their experience. From what I've seen, they just kind of moved and are trying to live a quiet life.
That is so interesting. How do you move on from that?
I don't know. If you experienced all of this and you're just oh, well, it's gone.
All right. Anyway,
you want to go to a movie?
I was going to say, guess I'll go to college and get a job. I don't know.
Yeah.
What the heck? Okay, well, thanks. Thanks for that. And thanks for this tea again. It was so interesting. If y'all want this, get this and get some vanilla creamer or something. It would be so good. And I don't like cream in my coffee. I don't drink coffee. Cream in my tea.
But this
isn't tea to me. This is,
And you talked about steeping it in milk. That would be interesting. We should try that one day.
Yeah.
To give it a little more a heavy, rich, yeah. Because this is very light. It's like if you were to make hot chocolate with water, but a little
lot of water.
extra water. Yeah.
Yeah. Anywho.
What a story.
Yep.
I was afraid the entire time I was reading and writing this, just so you know.
Yeah, I know. I'm kind of nervous to edit it. I'm not going to lie. I was thinking halfway
through. Don't do it late at night.
That's what I was thinking partway through. I was like, I'm going to have to listen back to this. I don't just have to listen to it one time anymore.
No.
I think that a lot of the time now.
It makes it scarier when you're,
by
especially
myself.
if you're editing at night, you're looking over your shoulder, did I hear something?
And that's when I can focus, is at night.
Mm-hmm.
I can't focus until everybody goes to sleep.
At night.
Yeah.
So, like this video if you like it, share it with your friends if you feel compelled to do so, and subscribe for more. If you're on podcast, leave us 5 stars, please. That would be greatly appreciated. And don't forget to comment. Let us know what you think. Are you a believer in the Warrens? Do you think that they are evil? As some believe that they are. Where do you fall? Do you think this story was fully true? Do you think it was juiced up? Do you think it was sensationalized for the sake of selling books? I would like to know where the audience falls.
Because I don't know where I fall.
Because I'm kind of somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
I think.
All right.
From the little I know.
If you're still here, leave a dog emoji for Simon and for our special guest today, Petey. He's down there. Y'all can see him. He's just off next
camera.
to the table. But
And if you want more from us, you can go to our Patreon. It's patreon.com/ghosties. It's in the description as well. We've got another story, or like full-length episode up this month. It's like spooky summer stories, like
And
summertime ghost stories. It's really, really scary.
I'm still not over. I haven't watched it back, and I'm wondering if I'm making it crazier in my mind. I'm still not over the June one, the Ammon's haunting.
Yeah,
That
was
one
scary.
scared me so bad.
That was scary.
But anyways,
This one and the Ammon's hauntings are both like up there.
yes, spooky stuff, man.
Yeah. Well, we'll see you Thursday for listener stories.
Goodbye.